Hello, thank you for joining me for lunch today. Today we are looking at the topic of hurt. Is there anything good that can come from it? Hurt's part of our lives. It's something we're going to face to some extent at some stage. And, when I get sick or injured, the first thing I want is to get over it as quick as possible. But can going through the tough times, being hurt even unfairly, is there purpose in that? That's the question we're exploring today, and as always, be interested to hear your experiences and thoughts. Leave them in the chat or in the comments. Just watch this first though as an introduction.
One of my favourite forms of art is when the artist takes bits of old scrap and turns it into something new. Like this flower here, old scrap metal, turned into something beautiful. I like the concept of reusing something that is neglected and forgotten, has seen better days, and transforming it into something beautiful again. Maybe even more beautiful than what it was originally. I look at a young child and I think of all they're going to have to go through in life as they grow up, the pain and the hurt they're going to encounter. And it's hard to think that that's the reality that everyone must go through. It's sometimes things that were never quite right need to be broken so they can be made the way they were meant to be. I love the ability of an artist who can see something where everyone else just sees rubbish, sees the potential for what it could be. Those things in your life that are causing hurt, those things that have been done to you, maybe you're behind some of those mistakes. Maybe there's no explanation. I encourage you to take those things to God and let Him transform them. I think there's something in the healing, the process of healing, that makes us appreciate things in a way that we couldn't if the hurt didn't happen to begin with. It's the journey towards wholeness, where I think we discover who we are and who God is.
So we're going to look at a story of a guy named Joseph. Now Joseph, he'd been hard done by more than most people. His brothers, for instance, at one point, they wanted to kill him, but ended up instead deciding to sell him as a slave. And then he was put into jail for something he didn't do, spent years there. But he was able to see that situation turn out for something really good. And he didn't turn bitter from all those things that had happened, the ways that he'd been hurt. So let's look at that story now and see the hope that there is in some of the things that we go through. So let's start at verse 3. Here he is standing in front of his brothers, the very ones who'd sold him into slavery. And now he's in a new position. We'll find out about that as we read. "I am Joseph," he said to his brothers. "Is my father still alive?" But his brothers were speechless. They hadn't recognized him. They were stunned to realize that Joseph was standing right there in front of them. Amazing. "Please come closer," he said to them. So they came closer, and he said to them again, "I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into slavery in Egypt. But don't be upset, and don't be angry with yourselves for selling me to this place. It was God who sent me here, ahead of you, to preserve your lives. This famine that has ravaged the land for 2 years will last 5 more, and there will neither be ploughing or harvesting." This famine was the whole reason these brothers had came to Egypt. They needed food. "God sent me ahead of you to keep you and your families alive and to preserve many survivors. So it was God who sent me here, not you. And he is the one who made me an advisor to Pharaoh, the manager of his entire palace, and the governor of all Egypt. What a story. And now hurry back to my father and tell him, this is what your son Joseph says. God made me master over all the land of Egypt. So come down to me immediately. You can live in the region of Goshen, and you can be near me with all your children and grandchildren, your flocks and your herds and everything you own. I will take care of you there. There are still 5 years of famine ahead of you. Otherwise, you, your household, and all your animals will starve. That is an amazing story. And we can see here that though he's been mistreated, he is able to look back. In hindsight, I'm sure it was tough during the time, but he was able to look back and see that all that had happened to him, all the pain and hurt and suffering he'd been through, had purpose in the end. And whatever you're going through, your current situation, or things that have happened to you in the past that might still gnaw away at you at times, I'd encourage you to trust God with them, to see that He's able to give those things purpose if we can bring them to Him and let go of the need to get revenge, but rather to be people that forgive and put that hope into Him and what He can do, taking those broken things and turning them into something good. So I hope that's your story, that you can look at the story of Joseph and see that God can do the same for you, because that's who God is. We see His creation in the beginning. Look at previous episodes of this if you want to hear that story. But He didn't give up on it. He stuck with humanity, stuck with the world that He'd made, even though it had been broken, and continues even now to restore it and bring wholeness where there is brokenness. So good to